back. Douglas Murray's latest must-read book has been called the most important of the year. But that's to be expected, with the British commentator now firmly established as one of the most significant writers of our time. The War on the West, How to Prevail in the Age of Unreason, is his latest assault on the parasitic woke culture threatening our way of life, as he implores us to take pride in our history. So, Douglas valiantly defends the West from its detractors and examines how Western civilization's greatest achievements, from medicine to science and to culture and free thinking, are actually being erased from history as the product of dead white males. And one of those dead white males, a hostile term dreamed up by the intolerant left, is a certain Winston Churchill, who has been dishonestly smeared because, despite heroically defeating Hitler and fascism, he was a dead old white male. And Douglas, congratulations on the book. While you were writing it, what did you discover about why these woke warriors on the left are so desperate to destroy Churchill in particular?
Well, that's a very good question, Dan. I look at the lies they've been telling about, and I take them apart one by one. And I think everybody in Britain needs to know about these lies, because they are so invidious, they are so unfair, they are so filled with untruths. 20 years ago, the BBC ran a Greatest Britons poll. And if you remember, we voted overwhelmingly to make Winston Churchill, name him as our greatest Briton. And it's hardly surprising. We have a lot of great heroes in Britain, but Churchill must count as among the greatest of the lot. So I was amazed in recent years to see this reputation starting to be assaulted and then finally overturned. Nowadays, when the BBC runs any news story about Winston Churchill, you always get these 10 things that he did wrong. He's accused of racism. He's accused of all sorts of things. He's accused of having values of the Victorian era, which, since he was born in the Victorian era, shouldn't be that much of a surprise to anyone. Amazingly enough, not all of Churchill's beliefs were what we believe in 2022. Amazing, that, isn't it? But one of the things I kept coming to was, why did it become so vicious? Why, by 2020, with the BLM protests in London, was Churchill's statue so often assaulted, more often than the cenotaph, more often than any other memorial? Why was it so often assaulted? Why did it end up having to be boxed up in a steel box? Because there is a war going on against everything in our history and in our culture in the United Kingdom and across the wider West. It is a massive campaign that has been growing for years and has sped up in the last few years. It is a war that intends to take out our heroes. It's not an accident that they've come for Churchill. It's absolutely central, because the activists of the far left, the Marxists and others, all know that if you take out Churchill, you take out Britishness. If you destroy our holy places, you destroy our place. It's the same in America, where the same people have been trying to tear down Abraham Lincoln and Thomas Jefferson and the founding fathers. It's the same in Canada. It's the same in Australia, as you know. It's the same story everywhere. And this has a historic precedent. If you want to carry out a cultural revolution, as is being attempted on Britain at the moment and the wider West, you have to make sure that you desecrate our holy places. You tear down our monuments. You replace them with your own gods. You destroy the temples of the West in order that the peoples of the West know that they are totally subjugated and have to hand themselves over to whoever it is who plans to run the place afterwards. It's very deliberate, very concerted, and everybody in Britain needs to know how to fight back against this.
But Douglas, what your book makes so clear, and one of the things that is so disturbing, is that much of this attempt to erase our history actually comes from within formerly great British institutions.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, there are lots of forms of anti-Westernism that I could write about. There's Arab anti-Westernism, Russian anti-Westernism, Chinese anti-Westernism. But what I'm interested in is Western anti-Westernism. Why are we doing this to ourselves? Why would any culture do this to ourselves? And now, in Britain in particular, the only country worse is America. in Britain in particular, every one of our institutions is waging war on our own culture. Take any institution. The Globe Theatre in London seeks to decolonize Shakespeare. One of its experts recently described Shakespeare's language as all over the place because she accused it of racism because, amazingly, Shakespeare uses terms like light and darkness. So the Globe Theatre decolonizes Shakespeare. The British Library publishes a incredibly cack-handed list of British authors who are dead, who are tainted with slavery. This included Ted Hughes, the late poet laureate, who was born in the 1930s into a very poor background in Yorkshire and never benefited anything from slavery, which took place centuries before his birth. They smeared the late poet laureate and distinguished poet Ted Hughes for something he had no connection with. Look at the Tate Gallery in London, which has closed up a room with one of the greatest murals in London by Rex Whistler, painted by the Tate. They've smeared Rex Whistler, who died on his first day in action in 1944 fighting the Nazis. They've smeared him at Tate Britain, one of their own artists, as a racist because of one detail in a mural which has nothing to do with racism. They've smeared one of their paintings by Stanley Spencer, one of the great paintings of the National Collection, The Resurrection at Cookham. They've accused Stanley Spencer of racism in their own collection. You look at Kew Gardens, which has sought to decolonize the gardens because gardens are racist, because lawns are racist. We've got the National Trust that believes that the buildings that they're meant to be looking after are actually the products of racism and colonialism and slavery. What I'm trying to urge on to you is the fact that everything from government departments to all the people who are meant to be the custodians of our culture have turned on our culture. They have turned on the British people and our past.
I couldn't agree more. So what do we do, Douglas? How do folk watching and getting as angry as I am hearing that beautifully put list of completely shocking examples, what do we do? How do we fight back against this?
Firstly, educate ourselves. One of the purposes of the war on the West is to give people the ammunition they need to push back against these people. The people making these claims are utterly and repeatedly ignorant. They know nothing about our past, even as they are busy defaming it. They call everybody a racist. They think everybody in Britain is tainted with racism, slavery, colonialism, and much more. So it's time to say no. No. I and you are guilty of nothing. We have no responsibility for slavery. We have no responsibility for colonialism. We are not a racist society. We are none of these things that we are accused of. None of it. It is deeply, deeply racist in itself to claim that everybody in Britain, by some hereditary taint, has to pay for a past we had nothing to do with. At the same time, we have to remind people that there is not just a history of shame in the United Kingdom. There is not just a story. Racism is part of the story of Britain, as sadly it's a story of every country and nation and peoples in the world. But it isn't our story. Slavery is a part of our story, but it isn't our story. Colonialism is a part of our story, but it isn't our story. So we have to simultaneously say not only that, no, we will not be made into these cowed, beaten up people who have to cringe our way through lives. We will not only not be that, we will be allowed to be proud of what is great about our nation now and what has been in the past. And here's the evidence of why. Britain is one of the countries in the world, the top 5 repeatedly, that people in the world want to come to. Repeatedly. There are no boats leaving the south coast of England trying to flee to the continent and from there into Africa. There are no movements of people from America trying to smuggle their way to Central America. America, Britain, Canada, and other countries of the West are the countries that the world wants to come through. So this is my point. It's not just that we're good now. It's that, and the footfall proves that, it's that in order that we are good now, we must have done something right in the past. We aren't just lucky in our society. As a famous American sports player put it once, luck is the residue of design. We in Britain are not just lucky by happenstance or coincidence. We are lucky because people before us did good things, great men and women did great things. And it would be the biggest disgrace imaginable if this generation decided to turn on all those people and dismiss that luck and dismiss those people and pretend that we're better than them. And that is what is going on in Britain on a daily basis. One final example, if I may. Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, 2 years ago, set up a commission, a Robespierrean-titled commission on looking into diversity in the public realm. It aspires to tell us what in our history in London we are allowed to keep up, what things need to be pulled down. Everybody on the commission is an anti-British person in one way or another. One of its members famously screamed at the Queen a few years ago in Westminster Abbey. Every single member of the commission is hostile to our history and to this country. They have no damn right to tell us what we are allowed to have up. And they have no damn right to tell us what we should put up in its place. And the current ideas they have to put up in its place are, oh, wait for it, things like a national slavery museum. They want to rewrite our history from a history of pride into a history of shame. I don't believe they can do it, and I'll tell you very quickly why. No minority group would put up with being talked to and about in this term. No minority group would agree that they are wicked from the cradle to the grave and everyone before them was wicked and they have nothing to be proud of. No minority group would agree to that. So here's the thing. The majority wouldn't and shouldn't put up with it either. No. We are the majority. The people who want to destroy our past are the minority. So they're the ones who should lose. They're the ones who have to have this fight taken to them. They're the ones we clear out of the way. They are not the ones to stand judge over you, me, anyone else, let alone the people of our past, let alone Winston Churchill or any of our other heroes.
I am shaken, I am stirred, and I am inspired by that. Douglas Murray, thank you so much. And Douglas's latest must-read book, The War on the West, How to Prevail in the Age of Unreason, is published on Thursday.